Okay, I'm going to introduce you to something funny, and that funny thing is the self-replicating fart cloud. So, if you're astute, you might have noticed that we used valence formation here. And one interesting thing about valence formation is that it's actually a universal buff. Good examples of this also would be like Arcane Arachne. So if I jump up here and hang, you could actually see we got that 150% damage buff. That's also a universal buff. Universal buffs are special because they apply to some abilities. Breach Surge is one of those abilities. And as you can see, in this case, one really interesting thing about Lavos specifically is that he can use any element and apply it to anything. And so we've gotten all these fart clouds from gas that have just been applied by Breach Surge. And then Breach Surge is reapplying a second stack of Breach Surge after that fart cloud happens again. And so what we end up with is this fart cloud that kind of just spreads. So the gas will just kind of spread across the enemies, like as the Breach Surge particles hit and then proc status. Obviously, this isn't that strong by itself, but I'm going to try to introduce you to a couple more mechanics with Lavos specifically that will make this actually good. So here is one of the interesting things about it. One, you can obviously speed this up quite a bit just by using your weapon, right? So like if I just spam this, we'll get a bunch more Breach Surge procs much faster. And the Mutial Surge specifically is kind of special because it makes its own like sort of gas clouds that will proc Toxin every time. And then each of those Toxin procs will also proc Breach Surge. And then on top of that, the Breach Surge will re-proc itself as it spreads out. And so you can kind of see that, like, if we're just using this as a weapon while this is going on, we're actually getting those Breach Surge clouds to proc much faster. And then this ends up being pretty good, just as a solo weapon, kind of. Another interesting thing about Lavos is that he gets a ton of status duration just from his passive. And Gas is special because it's the only status that lingers after enemies die. And so you can actually see that these fart clouds are like still here long after everything has died, right? So that's kind of another thing that we're going to be looking at here is, hey, we can make these fart clouds, we can make them last a really, really long time, even after the enemies that initially created them die. We can reapply Breach Surge to new enemies, and then those new enemies will walk into the clouds and start the cycle again, right? Here is the Lavos build, if you're curious. I don't know if this is necessarily the best thing that you could be doing here. The most important things that you have here are range, so that Breach Surge can actually hit stuff, and then duration, so that one, your status duration is longer, so the gas clouds last longer, and then two, so that the actual blind from Breach Surge lasts longer. And then after that, just like strength, so that the particles do more damage is pretty good. Beyond that, we are subsuming over 2 here, because we don't need cold at all for this. All we need is heat. Obviously, you need valence formation for this to work, and then from there, it's basically just a health tank build. So we're using Umbral Vitality and then Reaper for the armor. I'm also going to introduce you to Ruvox. If you haven't used this weapon before, one thing that is really nice about it is this evolution right here. It makes impaled enemies just have flat status chance on them for anything that hits them. And that includes Breach Surge, it turns out. So if we slam on an enemy and we elevate them like this, what will happen here, we actually have to get rid of Overguard first. We're going to need the buffs. One thing about this is that Breach Surge can't really proc until afterwards, so we do need a little bit of help starting. Okay, but now we're stacked up, so this should go a little bit better. Oh, we actually have to wait for these clouds to disappear, because if I spawn them now, they're just going to die inside of the clouds again. So let's wait a little bit so that these actually disappear. Okay, try again. All right, you see these clouds? Or these spikes that come out? That is what we're looking at here. Those, as long as an enemy is impaled, they will have higher status chance on them. So another thing to note about this interaction is that it kind of works with any DOT status. This will work with heat, it'll work with electric, it'll work with toxin, it'll work with gas. The only reason I'm showing it with gas is because 1, gas is AoE, and 2, gas lasts after the enemy dies. And so if you're using this in like a survival, for example, you would kind of want it to be gas, because after the enemy dies, you lose that status, and so you lose the source of Breach Surge particles. But if you're using Breach Surge to proc on new enemies that walk into the gas clouds, then those ones will spawn more Breach Surge particles. So I would recommend gas for most of this, but there is a good second one to use, and that is electric. And the reason you would use electric is because melee weapons have influence. And so obviously this tends to start up much faster. But same idea, right? Like we're getting electric procs, the electric procs are lasting a pretty long time, and then those electric procs are proccing Breach Surge a second time, which sets up more electric procs, and then this continues forever, right? Or at least until Breach Surge wears off. So still very good. It's just, it also gets influence. Quick Cirriculus demo, might as well. This is going to be a short one. I just kind of want to demonstrate this working in practice real quick. We'll see how well it does. All right, we got our buffs going. Thing to note, because Lavos tends to do this wonderful thing where he puts his own abilities on cooldown. If you're doing this, I highly recommend keeping your 3 so that you can reduce the cooldown of it. All right, we're starting to get those gas clouds going. Ideally, we do this in a place where we have choke points like this climb up right here, so that as enemies like walk up and try to climb into things, they end up dying, basically. You can see our gas clouds over here are already starting to just kill stuff by themselves, which is pretty good. I think I kind of want a more open place than this, though. Let's go see if we can find one of the good tiles. I'd like there to be a better line of sight for research to do its thing. All right, let's switch to electric while we're running around. It looks like there's a pretty good open space over here. Let's do this. So one thing I probably will need to get used to is the time it takes for Breach Surge to actually travel. If you slam too early, like if you get ahead of your Breach Surge particles, it does worse for obvious reasons. So just something worth noting. And you can actually see we're getting some of our clouds and stuff over here, which is pretty great. I am running Doriga here too, so we have kind of double status spreading here. And obviously, like any priming that you can do will make the gas clouds do more damage. So like a viral heat primer would be ideal. Similarly, if you can armor strip in some other way, that would be good. And then anything that your team does to buff you will also work on this. So Nourish, for example, will work on the Breach Surge particles. Roar will obviously make all of your damage do more damage. And then, you know, just if you have like a Trinity on your team who's passive armor stripping, that would be pretty nice also. As well as giving you some survivability that Lavos doesn't really have at higher levels, right? So like in the 200s like this is not that bad, but obviously this build is going to struggle a little bit with survivability like as you get higher levels. All right, here's our Acolyte test. It turns out Slam is good against Acolytes. Who could have seen this coming? All right, let's switch to Cernus for a bit. We'll just see how this goes. We've been knocked over by my own stupidity. All right. This is going to proc way more gas clouds than the Ruvox was, because the Ruvox kills things too fast. So we're going to tend to get more Breach Surge particles, which means, to a certain extent, this is going to work both better and worse. It'll work better in the fact that the clouds will spread better, but it'll work worse in the fact that, like, we won't just immediately murder everything. So you can kind of, whichever way you prefer it, I think both are fun. This one maybe is more fun just because you see more particles, but it's really up to you. We are on the wrong focus goal for this, aren't we? That is okay. Damage is damage, it turns out. I think at this point we probably get the idea. It does seem to be working as intended, so that is always a plus. I do keep forgetting to use Arcane Arachne, so you may want to switch off of that, to be honest. It's really up to you, though. This is... The purpose of this build is Breach Surge, right? Doing funny Breach Surge things. So anything beyond that, it's kind of up and down how you want to do it. For auras, I am running Ready Steel here, so that Ruvox always has Incarnate mode active, but realistically, like if you want to run Worthy Camaraderie instead, Breach Surge does use the crit chance from Worthy. So that is another good option. Beyond that, obviously, like Corrosive Projection is still very good. So you can use that if necessary. But I don't really have a huge opinion on what the aura should be. All right. Back to gas procs. Back home. Let's regen some health with Reaper real quick. Get that armor also. Something to note here too. While I did suggest Mutalisk Cernos and Ruvox in this, you can really use any weapon. One other weapon that I would recommend too is the Hate. Burning Hate is a very good mod, it turns out. And one thing that's specifically nice about Hate is that you can actually switch to using Electric to start. And then when melee influence procs, you can switch to Heat. And then the Heat will spread and you'll get the status damage on it from Breach Surge particles. So it's a very good option also. I wouldn't necessarily say that one is better than the other. They're kind of all very similar. And I haven't like thoroughly tested on like kills per minute or anything insane, so I wouldn't worry about it too much, to be honest. Really, you could use literally any weapon with this and it would still be good. Like, here's my Sicarus Incarnate. Like, this is still going to work just fine, right? We're still doing the same thing. We have gas, we have Breach Surge. It's still a very good weapons platform build, even without like the ability killing part of it. So the only reason that we're using the ability killing part of it is because it's funny. So easily 100 kills per minute right now. We are at 1072. So this is fine. I think this build is okay. It is kind of just slam KPM to a certain extent too. Like, obviously Sam is very good. Obviously Sam will be nerfed next patch, but it is worth noting that because mostly what they're nerfing is the actual like slam radius, it matters less for this build. Because a lot of the radius from this build comes from the Breach Surge particles. And so as long as you have the gas clouds on the ground, the radius will still be good. So I wouldn't worry about this nerf too much, to be honest. Like, you can still run this and it will be fine. Thank you, Laxlad, for the Forma gift. Really, really do appreciate it. Master Iron Stash, also thank you for the Forma. Double appreciate it. I always really appreciate Forma, as always. And then thank you, Temtem, for the 9 Forma bundle gift. That's a lot of Forma. I hope this satisfies you in terms of weird, funny interactions. I do tend to plan to do mostly these kind of builds for this channel. I'll probably do this and like Riven rolls for the most part. So if I run into anything funny, I'll try to post it as soon as I can. As long as it's interesting and people haven't done it before and people find it neat. So thank you. I think I like forgot to show all of the builds here. So once again, here's the Lavos build. Mutilis Cernos. Here's my Riven. Riven doesn't really matter. The only thing that really matters is that you have as much reload speed here as possible so that you can proc as many things as possible, but use any weapon that fires fast. It really doesn't need to be the Mutilis. Just use kind of whatever you feel like. And then Ruvox, this is just a very normal slam build. I'm using Corrupt Charge here so that we actually hit the 3x combo with this and Ready Steel. But really, anything's good. Sorry, I forgot to show this earlier. I probably should have done this like at the beginning of the video. That's what I normally do. I'll try to timestamp this down in the description though. So if people need it, they can find it immediately. Thank you guys for watching. Obviously, there's not much else to say about this build. It is exactly what it says on the tin. We're taking fart clouds, we're spreading them all over the place. It smells real bad. So hopefully people enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time.